Okay, here's why being a realtor is harder than being a locator. And the reversal of that is why it's easier to be a locator over being a realtor. It's really about the psychology of what's going on in the client's mind. That's one big aspect, is the psychological. So when you ask someone to become their realtor, the goal that a realtor is going to achieve for that client is to help them, find their long-term home. That's the number one biggest investment that they make in probably their lives. And so people understand that, the market knows that. And so in order for them to be okay with someone to act as a realtor, they really have to build that trust. And in a way, it's almost like a marriage, right? So the analogy here is like being a realtor is marriage for people, where being a locator is kind of like going on the first date. And this is what I mean by that. When someone's in the market to rent an apartment, it's not really that big of a deal for them. A lot of the times in our career, we have clients that just move for work temporarily. They might have just became an adult. Maybe they're 20 years old and it's their starter apartment. Maybe they're just trying to split the rent with a friend or a colleague. And so as long as the apartment's close to work, they don't really care, right? It's much more of a temporary situation. It's not so long-term like a house purchase. And so, first of all, most of the market doesn't even know what a locator is. We have to keep that in mind. And so understand that there's only 5,000 active locators, really actually less than that, compared to 1.55 million active realtors. So first of all, the market's way less saturated, but people don't really know locators exist. And so when we post advertisements online and people realize that a professional in their market can help them find an apartment that works for them, it's not really a huge deal to people. And so they're much more willing to say, okay, help me, I'll be your customer, especially if it's a free client service. Whereas as a realtor, you have to persuade people that you're the best realtor they have the option to work with, and that you're going to be responsible and professional and competent to get them into their long-term home as a purchase or sell their home for as much money as they can. Because if they chose wrongly and you're not the right realtor, you might have left their money on the table, tens of thousands of dollars, if you priced it wrong. So the point I'm trying to make here is people take it really seriously, but when it comes to locating, people don't really care. Most of them don't even know that we exist. They just read an ad and go, sure, I'll let you help me. It's free. There's no contracts. So this translates into easier lead gen as a locator. That's why being a locator, if you want to focus on that with your real estate license, is way easier than being a realtor. We have much respect for realtors dealing with contracts, persuading people, having to deal with more expensive lead costs when they run marketing ads. But personally and as a company, we choose to work as apartment locators because it's just a whole lot easier. So that's kind of the first big reason right there, is you have to understand that the market is really picky when it comes to signing a buyer's rep and letting you be the realtor, okay? And then the other part of why it's way easier to be a locator is that apartment locators, we don't deal with any of the contracts or timing limits that normal realtors do, okay? If you're a realtor, you're helping someone buy a house and you're facilitating like a transaction with another broker, you have to make sure that you're building contract forms, whether they're from the real estate commission or you can borrow some from NAR. They have some of the promulgated forms, but you got to fill that stuff out as a realtor, send it back and forth, the offers, counter offers, etc., inspections, setting all that stuff in a timely fashion. And if you're a couple days late, say on a counter offer or letting someone know about a certain disclosure, you can get sued because this is big money transactions. So that is really hard to do. When you compare the alternative as an apartment locator, we don't deal with any contracts at all. And people might be thinking, yeah, but there's a rental application that they have to fill out. And what about the binding lease agreement? That's a contract. That's true. Those are contracts and applications. But what's really nice about being a locator is that when we take on clients, book and send them a list of options, the clients tour by themselves and the apartment staff sends to your client the online lease application for them to sign. So yeah, there's a couple contracts in the locating process, but the locators aren't dealing with it, right? Whereas if you're a realtor, you're preparing the contract, sending it over, letting people know about certain disclosures, and having to remember the time limit you have per each client you're helping. So it's way harder that way. And the last point we'll talk about in this video is, because we understand now that it's harder to do the contract and deal with them as a realtor compared to a locator where there's none. And the second thing is that there's a psychological aspect of people just being pickier with working with realtors, because it's kind of like a marriage. You're helping them do a very important thing in their lives as opposed to just renting an apartment, right? So remember the analogy, marriage as a realtor, first date as a locator, right? There's just less expectations overall. But then the other big component is that this stuff translates into more expensive paid advertisement campaigns. And you really have to understand that, because marketing is already hard in general if you're a real estate agent. So if you start in a field where your lead cost for paid advertisements is generally much more expensive compared to the lead costs if you just did locating, you have to know that it's harder even when it comes to digital marketing, if the goal is to generate a listing agreement, or if the marketing campaign goal is to generate representing a buyer through a signed buyer's rep. Those campaigns are always 100% of the time more expensive than generating paid advertisements for helping renters for free with no contract. There's no argument, there's no debate. If you run a paid Facebook ad and you try to be someone's realtor, that paid Facebook ad cost per appointment book or cost per lead is always going to be more expensive by a multiplier compared to apartment locator leads. And sometimes it's over 3x more expensive. And now I think you understand why it makes sense. If you just run a cold ad to someone, it's really hard to have to persuade them. We're awesome realtors, work with us and sign a buyer's rep. When it comes to an ad that's like, hey, we know you're moving. Why don't you work with us? It's free. We'll set up your utilities, and heck, we'll give you a $100 dining voucher that you can use while all your pots and pans are in boxes. People don't even care that much about, who's going to help them rent an apartment, because they don't really value an apartment as much as a house purchase anyways. So that those leads are much more affordable, and your cost per lead booked is always less expensive. So what I would encourage you guys to do, if you are interested in starting in the real estate industry, or maybe you're like a realtor that's barely making it, just pivot over to the apartment locating model. That's all we do full time. And we have over 550 students that we're teaching to do this as well. It's much easier work. There's 0 contracts to deal with, 0 negotiations. If they don't like the price, you show them a different apartment. And there's just a lot of potential when it comes to paid advertisement campaigns as well that are always less expensive. So even if you're not that good at marketing, it is going to be easier as a locator compared to if you were a realtor trying to get into paid ads. I hope this video was helpful and at least gave you a new perspective of what to think about, because like I said in the beginning of the video, most people don't even know apartment locators exist. If you want a more thorough breakdown of this business model, I invite you to either book a call with my team. It's actually free to talk to us, or visit our website, nal.rent. And there's a free business breakdown on that website that'll give you more information about why we're choosing to focus on this niche. There's also a cool free audio book with a cool 3D effect that you can just read about the business. We don't even charge for that, even though we could. It's just free embedded on our website. So definitely check out nal.rent if you want to learn more about this new perspective that you might not have considered in your real estate career. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.